I guess a good place to begin is start with Mr. Hammack. And Mr. Hammack, when and where were you born?
I was born in Arlington, Texas. You want to know the year?
Yes, sir.
1899.
1899. Goodness. What were your parents' names?
Mr. J.W. Hammack and Mrs. L.O. Hammack.
What brought y'all out to this country? What brought your parents out to this country?
He was going blind and he couldn't see to work, and this land come on the market, and he took up some land out here, and he got it and he moved out here in 1905.
1905. How did he hear about this land being on the market? Did you ever hear him say?
Never heard him say that.
Miss Hammack? You bet.
Oh, okay. Back in 1903 or 4, to the best of my memory, Texas passed this homestead law where you could take up 8 sections and live on it. You had to live on it and put some improvements on it. And after 3 years, well, they would give you a deed to it.
You know.
That's the way the homesteaders got their land.
So your parents came out here to homestead, is that?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell him the year he came.
Well, I told him, and
Okay.
Y'all come out by wagon or?
no, we come to Van Horn on the train, and then from there up here in the wagon and team.
How long a journey was that by wagon and team from Van Horn?
2 days.
Do you recall what the country looked like then?
About like it does now.
Was there more grass or less grass?
Oh yeah, there was more grass, but there's
And more rain.
and more rain. But the country itself looked just about the same. But I think the wind blowed harder then than it does now. Tell you, it blowed awful hard them days. Dust storms really had a lot of them.
These the type of dust storms that just would roll in, or
Well,
would it just?
Not like it did in 33 and 34. They just rolled in then. But these just would come from the west, just pick it up.
Miss Hammack, I was wondering if you could tell us when and where you were born also.
I was born in Llano, Texas in 1904. And my dad heard of this homestead law, and he bought 8 sections of land out from Van Horn, northwest of Van Horn. And we came the hard way, wagon and team from Llano.
Goodness.
19 days on the road.
What part of Llano? Was it the city of Llano or Llano County?
No, I was born on Crabapple Creek, south of Llano a little ways, but Llano was the county seat.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got to Van Horn, he didn't know where the land lay. We didn't know where it was. And luckily, there was a surveyor in Van Horn that knew. And it took him about a week horseback to go on out there and camp and find his land.
Mm-hmm.
And they found my uncle's land also. All of us came together from Llano.
Your parents' names, what were they?
My dad's name was Jervis Edgar McAdoo. My mother, I never knew her. She died when I was a baby. Her name was Lizzie Ella Bird before she married him.
Mm-hmm. Were they both from Llano County originally?
Yes.
Were your parents farmers or ranchers? Or both?
Out here, we were ranchers, but now I think my dad worked out there in Llano all the time for somebody, because we didn't have any land.
Mr. Hammack, when what was your father's occupation?
He was a cotton buyer, and when he bought cotton and he lost all of his money because he was going blind, he misgraded the cotton, and he lost all of his money, and what he had left, he took it up on this land out here and moved out here.
Were there very many people out here when you all arrived?
Quite a few. It was quite a few people. You see, they was doing like we did. They homesteaded, and there's quite a few people. And then this ranch out here they had about 700 sections in it, and they worked lots of cowboys. The first year we come here, they branded 20,000 head of calves.
Boy.
And the next year started turning dry. They just branded 10,000.
That was the Figure 2 range.
The Figure 2 ranch?
Yes.
Yeah.
And his brothers worked as cowboys on the ranch, and so did my brothers and my dad. They worked at different times.
Is that how you two met?
How did we meet?
Yeah, how did you meet?
My sister married her brother. And I went over there to see my sister, and she was tagging around over there, and I don't know, I took to her. That's where we met.
My father and brothers worked out for several years to get enough money to build us a house. We lived in a tent and the wagons for a year or two.
Boy.
Till we could get a house built. There wasn't nothing there, nothing. And that's what his dad did. The oldest boy and his dad, they fenced for this big ranch. Now you asked something.
Okay. I was going to ask who some of the other families were when you all arrived out here.
Well, my brother married Mr. Abels' daughter, and they lived 3 miles north of us. Dr. Holmes lived 10 miles north, and Sid Abels lived about 15, and just ranchers like that around. And down south of us, Will Merritt lived down there, and a fellow by the name of Black John owned another house down there, and there was just a lot of people around.
Mm-hmm. Was this more or less a coming area for settlement then, about the turn of the century?
Well, I'd think so.
A little later, his dad got a post office. There was enough people to come to get their mail, and he got a post office established. And he named it Abels after the neighbor that joined him.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask y'all about Abels. Was there a store there too, or?
Mr. Hammack had a store.
Had a small store. It wasn't very big. Post office and store together.
What kind of goods did y'all carry in this store?
Just canned goods is about all.
They come in from El Paso, or?
No, we'd go to Van Horn and haul them with a wagon and team.
Is that a 2-day trip down?
2 days back. Yes, sir.
Where was this store located?
This is over on our ranch.
And could you explain to me where your ranch was?
It was 10 miles east of here. And, well, it's 7 miles east and about 4 miles north
Off of the highway.
off the highway,
Is that in the Patterson Hills?
Mm-hmm.
right up against them.
Do you know how those hills got their name?
Mm-hmm.
A man by the name of Pat Patterson worked for the Figure Twos, and they had a watering up on our ranch. And he stayed there, and he prospect up there, and they went to calling them Patterson Hills, and after him.
Did he ever find any minerals while he was prospecting?
I don't think so. If did, why, nobody never did know it.
What did y'all do for water in the early days?
We had wells. It
Doug.
was only about 16 feet then to water over there. But dry weather, the water level sunk.
How deep is it now?
About 60,
It's good water?
good water.
Not too good.
It's not all that bad either.
It's pretty good water. We drank it for 25 years. Didn't hurt us.
Our windmill well is about what now? It's better than 100 feet.
It's drilled, but the water level is
Yeah.
about 60.
About 60.
You know about the community of Orange?
Yes, sir. Been there many a time.
Not me.
Yes, sir. There was a lot of people lived up there. They had two teachers up there teaching school. There's that many children going to school. See, the ranchers back in New Mexico, they'd move there to send their kids to school in the school years. And then when school was out, they'd go out to their ranch and live.
Is there any way to estimate how many people would have resided at Orange?
And there was the Lewises, the Brownfield, the Snows,
The Jeffries,
Jeffers,
Caulfield.
Caulfields, and can't think of that. other-
Justices.
Yeah, and all of them had big families.
They had a pretty big store, post office, gasoline station, and everything was freighted out from Cereblaca by wagon and team.
Boy,
Hard trips.
We got our first car in 1917. Got a 1917 Model T Ford. That's where I learned to take care of cars.
did you have trouble on some of these old wagon roads with that Model T?
Oh yeah, yeah. Walked
Especially if
pretty,
it rained.
walked pretty near as far as the road in the Model T.
How'd y'all get gasoline?
Haul it out from Van Horn to the wagon team.
His mother and sister, well, he had 3 sisters at home, didn't you?
Yeah,
But the oldest sister and his mother, they raised the most beautiful gardens every summer you ever saw. Irrigated it from the windmill. A bountiful garden,
What kind of fruits and vegetables?
all kinds. And they had peach trees and apple trees, things like that. And all kind of vegetables.
More or less irrigated from that
Windmill.
windmill.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember J.W. Brownfield?
Sure do.
Could you describe him?
You don't have a picture of him, do you? Well, he's a big fat man, slick-faced. I imagine he weighed 220 pounds, 30. And what makes you ask about him?
I just understood that he was one of the first people out in this area.
Yes, sir. Well, he was getting kind of old when we moved out here, and shortly after we moved out here, well, his wife died, and then, well, it just went on and on like that.
Mhm.
Mr. Abels had the ranch next to them, and he came here in 1904 and settled. And his wife died the next year or two, didn't she?
She died in 1903.
1903.
They moved out here in 1900.
Yeah, but he didn't get his land till 1904, because I have a letter I found in his old house.
Well, they moved out here in 1900.
Well, they lived up at Weed or somewhere up there.
Yeah, but they moved back down here, and they watered a lot of their cattle at Bone Springs before they got the watering fixed here.
Because I have a bill that he made in 1889.
Show him that thing. It's treasure, I'll tell you.
Cienega? Is that
Oh,
the government?
Seneca?
Seneca.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's up in New Mexico.
Which one of the Lewis's homesteaded there?
Dempson Lewis.
Yep. And then later on, they had a post office there.
Was it a pretty good sized community also?
Sir?
No, it's just a ranch. Just man and his wife and family lived there.
What did y'all do for entertainment in those early days?
Go to dances
Where were these held?
in the ranch houses.
And at Orange, the schoolhouse.
Yeah, in the schoolhouse at
Down
Orange.
to the big ranch down here. I wasn't here then, but I heard them talk about it.
How often were these dances held?
About, at Orange, they hold them about once a month.
1899.
Daughter, shut that light over. I can't
You
see.
should have gone over here in your chair.
Want to switch?
You'll have to help him up off that couch straight there.
When y'all would graze cattle,
Yes, sir.
was there lots of grassland for them to be grazed on, or?
Well, we had the best ranch there was in this country. When I left from over there, we had about 600 head of cattle on 11 sections. But it won't do that now. Of course, they've got a lot of it in farms.
Up near Dell City?
No, it's
Back over here.
across the lakes and 3 miles north.
When did they put that country into farms?
Oh, about
53.
Yeah.
50.
50. No, it was later, about 53.
Mhm. They find some water?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of water. Yes, sir, lots of water.
Is it shallow water?
They pump it about a little over 100 feet.
Does that water come down from the mountains?
Well, I imagine it does. We don't know where it comes from.
Do y'all know Tom Neely?
Yes, sir.
Betcha.
He was
He homesteaded a place up here.
his granddaddy was Dr. Holmesley that lived north of us about 12 miles, 15.
Do they live near Crow Flat?
Yes, sir. About 8 or 10 miles from Crow Flat,
South or
north.
north?
North.
No, south.
South.
Oh yeah, they're south, but
Holmesley was there, north.
the
They are the first ones up there that drilled for water. And they got a big well. And there was no pumps in that day and time to pump it and use it. But they knew they got lots of water. And that's where Dell City started hunting for water.
When did they drill this first well?
about
1915.
1950, about that.
19 and 15?
That's what they give me on that.
That's about right, because I was pretty good
That's what they
size.
said when I was writing up that history. It said 1950.
I was a pretty good size shaver when I went up there and watched him pump.
Can you recall what it looked like, what the activity was around there?
Well, they had a big trough, I'd say 18 inches wide and about 2 feet deep, and that was pumping it out in there. And it was running full off out there. And they had lots of alfalfa, but the gophers eat them up. And just drank that water up fast so they could run it down there. They didn't know how to control the gophers. I didn't either when I planted my farm in 1950, but man learnt me how about 4 or 5 years ago how to control them gophers. You just plow a ditch, 18 inches deep. Take a turning plow and plow it, and when you break that run, that gopher quits. He won't.
He moves out.
He moves out, and that's the way they're controlling them now.
After this first well was drilled, was there a lot of agricultural activity, or was it just
No.
a small alfalfa
Nothing.
field?
Nothing.
Nothing quit. They quit, and Mr. Neely moved down on the river and went to farming down there. And Joe Neely and Frank Neely, they're his sons. They was down there too. And Joe Neely, was it Joe Neely or Frank? Joe Frank. Now what's Tom Neely? He was our
County
judge for years.
Mm-hmm. They all live near Sierra Blanca now?
Yes, he does.
The old man's dead. His wife's still living.
She is 100,
She's 102.
102.
Gosh.
Her mind is just as spry. Of course, she's feeble. She's just wonderful.
Was there a railroad spur or talk of a railroad spur from Van Horn to this country?
Van Horn. That's when Joe Neely was farming this farm up there. And that war broke out over in Europe, and the men that was going to build that railroad up here was Englishmen. And they took their money and went back to England and went to fight in that war.
Well, they built some
They built 10 miles.
Some road bed out of Van Horn.
They built 10 miles out of Van Horn, that road bed. And then that broke out while they moved out.
Was that roadbed similar to the highway today? What I mean is, did it follow the same path as the highway today?
Well, partly. But it was going where the highway goes up that canyon, while they was going to go around that mountain.
Stay out in the flat.
Stay out in the flat all the way.
Now we got the same tale again. We're gonna get another railroad out from Van
Have you heard about it?
I haven't heard about that.
Yeah.
Oh, what's a good one?
What's the story on that? When they,
Professor Electric's gonna put an electric plant in Dell City.
They want
Ship
to,
coal up here to make electricity.
they want to buy out the REA in Dell City and run a railroad out from some point, they haven't decided where yet, and ship coal from way off somewhere, and they say they can sell electricity to us cheaper.
We're getting fixed to get taken again.
Another harebrained scheme. Oh.
when did REA bring electricity into this area?
59?
58 or 59.
Somewhere around that. I don't remember exactly.
Did y'all have to string the wires yourself?
No, they done it. We had light plants all the time we was over here until the REA moved in.
When you say light plants, I didn't understand. Where were they located and how big an area would they serve?
The light plant? Oh, we had our own light plant right here.
Each station on the road had their own.
See, we've had this place since 1929. And the first year we was here, we didn't have any electricity. We just had to do as we could. Then we got a light
We wasn't
plant.
used to nothing, so it didn't hurt.
Well,
When we got that first Kohler, why, we thought we was downtown.
but, the only thing that was bad, we got the bus stop, you know, is first thing on the road at all. And one come in about 8 o'clock at night. Well, the coal lamps didn't light up the room too good, but they stopped with us anyway.
Was 1929 the year they built the highway here?
No, we didn't have any highway when we built here. The engineers that surveyed the road, and after the state accepted their survey, they told us, they brought us over here and showed us where the road was gonna go along. Because we were talking about we'd like to, put up a place like this. Because as we are having it now, we had a drought for about 10 years. And we just had to do something else.
Can you talk some about that drought? Decade-long drought. That's a long time
It's
without.
still going on, don't keep.
We still got one. We haven't had any rain in 3 years to do any good.
Really?
That's right. It'll rain a little spot here and maybe clear across on the other end, come a little rain. But it just don't do any good like that. But we're still having a drought.
It hadn't rained since last fall. It had a little bit of old snow that didn't amount to nothing.
Here, just on the other side of the mountains, it seems like they've had a little bit more rain than.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Lot
they
more.
always.
Rain and fog all winter.
They always get more rain on the other side of the mountain than we do on this side.
What we think happens here, this west wind that brings in the clouds, it rises and goes over the mountain. Well, and here's a dry spot. And when we get the east wind, it comes up over the mountain and it hits about 50 miles west of us and they get rain. That's the way we see it.
That southwest wind just absolutely kills us.
It takes it on towards New Mexico.
When did they build the highway between El Paso?
1930. And we built in 29.
So y'all were waiting for it when it...
Yeah, we were
was
waiting.
waiting when the...
I think we're about out on this side. Let me turn it over here. When this drought hit, did a lot of people give up their
A
land?
lot of people left the
It just
country.
ruined them.
A lot of
Cattle
people
died.
left.
Cattle died off, they couldn't feed them. It's ruined a lot of ranchers.
Is that when a lot of these smaller communities dissipated too?
That's when Orange went off the map.
That was in the 19 and 20s?
No, that was in yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah.
1917 was a real drought. It didn't rain at all. And people started leaving then in 19 and 20, and then 19 and 24, why, the rest of them left.
Well, when did Orange fold up?
About 19, no, they folded up in 19 and 17 and 18. Quite a few of them left.
Yeah, but it didn't completely go, just completely everybody left.
Well, when did Jim go to Hatch?
22.
22?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's when Orange folded up. in
Everybody, the store closed out and
20
everything.
everything in 22.
Why did y'all stay?
Nowhere to go.
Nobody was able to buy their place because everybody was broke. They stayed and the boys worked out and kept the place going, just like our place.
We had lots of cattle in 22 and 23, and we sold 250 cows and calves, $12 a round.
Mm-hmm.
And that, we got enough money to pay us out of debt and live till finally in 1929, well, it turned dry again, and then we decided to build this over here. When I had 300 cows, I sold them and built this. And then later, we bought the Abels Ranch over there and started building back up again.
When you say later, how much later? About what years?
Oh, 1937, wasn't it? Yeah, that's
I
when.
think so, 36 or 37 we bought it.
And then we've been hanging on ever since.
Still dry.
Still dry.
Did the Depression have much effect on this territory around here?
I made money all during the Depression.
But the ranchers didn't.
The ranchers didn't, but I did. We'd sell enough stuff here, and when them banks closed, I really got well. Because we'd sell enough stuff to cash their checks, company checks, you know, and we just done awful good.
They was putting the pipeline through here then. They was working.
In the late 1930s? Oil?
Gas.
Gas pipeline?
El Paso Natural Gas.
The oil and gas, the oil went in 1928.
Yeah.
And the first gas line went in 1929. We were their first customer here on this pipeline, back on the gas line.
Really?
Yes, sir, we was their first customer.
How many people did Salt Flat have at its peak?
At its peak,
54.
When was that?
That is when they had this landing field out here and
the FAA station.
FAA station and people living around here.
They worked 6 families out here.
And
That-
then,
Oh, go ahead.
and then this other station up here, there was, I think at one time they had 6 or 7 up there.
And the highway camp.
The highway camp. At one time, there was 54 people right here.
Was that after World War II?
And that was in the late 30s.
Late 30s?
Yeah.
I think they started building that in 36 or 37,
That's the FAA station?
Uh-huh.
weather station.
Okay, I guess the way I understood it was, I guess in 1930 they built an emergency landing field somewhere
Right
around.
back of us. And the houses.
Well, they didn't build the houses for a couple of years after that. They built the landing field, 2 or 3 years.
And they had 3 houses by 1941 and 1954 or
We had
59.
7 houses.
There were 7.
That's where you got your information from, Dick
Still?
Steele.
I was going to visit with him Thursday afternoon and well, a little more detail about that FAA station out there.
Well, one of the families that lived out there, now they retired and live up here back at the post office.
Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I was going to start asking about Dell City. Was that originally part of the Lockhart Ranch, that land out there?
Part of it was the Hitson. Well, the Hitson place was started. It was then, and then Presshurt had it leased. And I don't know who all had it leased, and later Lockhart got a hold of it. But I'd say he didn't get a hold of it until it must have been late 40s when he got a hold of it. And then he sold it, what's them three fellers' name that,
Lynch's.
no, he didn't sell it. It's
Merle,
Merle and
Chandler, and, I can't think of the other one.
Merle and Chandler.
So R.L. Merrill, Merrill.
Uh-huh.
Was the other fellow C.W. Boyles
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yes.
and Wayne Chandler?
Yeah.
Wayne Chandler.
Did they know about the water situation when they
Yeah,
bought that out?
that's the reason they bought it. They dug a well up there and planted cotton, and they had a wonderful crop. And they just sold that land a coming and going. They never would pick that cotton. They just sold that land a coming and a going.
Mhm.
And that's the way it got started.
Then in 1948, they began to move in and get land and drilling wells.
Is that pretty shallow water up there?
It was then, but it's getting deeper too.
Well, maybe you believe it is, but we know better. Anywhere from 16 on to about 2,200. They've got plenty of water, but they have to go way down there to get it.
Mhm.
That top water wasn't all that good anyway. You better go get to work. You played around too long.
That's our grandson.
He bosses mama.
He thinks he does.
You heard her tell him to go to work, didn't you?
He'd been working for a week on a water troughel.
Well, anything else now?
Okay, some of the early families in Dell City.
George McConnell and his family.
George McConnell and his family lived here in a house trailer until they could get their home built for nearly a year. And they moved to Dell City.
Who were some of the others now?
Donaldson,
Yeah. J.W. Donaldson. Oh, and that funny, you can't remember them?
Gentrys.
Yeah, the Gentrys. There was four of them.
One of them's the only one that
Left now.
left now.
Which
well,
one?
there's three there in Dell City.
They are.
Paul's there.
John Arthur's the one that sold his and retired and moved to Carlsbad. Now Paul and Mary is still there, and so is Lynn and Phyllis and Alvin and
That's right.
Lowell.
Well, but there's only one left with land.
No, they've all got land.
Farms. That's how far behind I am.
Let's see. Williams and Dodson's. After a while, I can think of a whole lot of them
And
probably.
the Three Musketeers, but I don't know their names.
Yeah.
How did Dell City get its name?
Now what's that?
Mrs. McConnell.
No, Boyles and what's her name? They're the ones that named it. They said that's a valley up there that,
Of the Valley of Bountiful Waters.
yeah.
And they call it, they wanted to call it Dell Valley, but somewhere else it was a Dell Valley, so then they called it Dell City.
And then there's a Dell City, Oklahoma, and you don't think that doesn't cause a confusion.
Y'all used to have wind chargers?
Mm-hmm. Tall Connie.
Well, this man up here, he had a wind charger, and it just gave him trouble all the time. The oil company had one down here on the lake charging to pull the electrolysis out of the pipeline, and it gave a lot of trouble. So I never did try the wind charger. But we had about, I imagine, about 10 or 12 light plants while we lived here before the REA come in.
Mhm. How were these light plants set up?
Well, they just the gas motor
And a generator.
and the
They're
generator.
built compact together, run on gasoline, or after we got natural gas, we had to run on natural gas.
Well, all of them are on natural gas, except in the Delcos.
Everything but Delcos, they run on natural gas.
Mhm.
The Delcos, they wouldn't run on.
You had to use gasoline on the Delcos.
We had 2 of them. It just kept me busy.
One night our lights went out. He got up and went out there and reached down to crank it. And somebody had left an old rooster out there and he didn't know it. He touched that old rooster and it flew up in his face. And he liked less country with a rooster. Oh. He never would take a flashlight.
Well, back them days, I wasn't afraid.
But now with the wetback problem, you're afraid to go out after dark.
Mhm. What kind of problems do y'all having with wetbacks?
Prowling around. They
Just-
don't bother anything.
They just surround the house, waiting for you to come out and ask for something to eat or want to buy something.
They don't ever bother.
But they don't to
just
pick
make
up anything or anything like that we know of. But at night or dark, they just surround the house.
Mhm. On their way north to work on farms?
They don't want to work. They're going on. They're going to Artesia. They're going to Roswell or somewhere else.
Mhm.
They don't want to work here.
Well, the reason they won't work here, the border patrol won't leave them alone. They won't go further. But as far as them bothering anything, they never have. It's just the idea of them out there.
Well, one time I have a watering over on my north ranch, and they went through there one evening. The man I had working there, why, he said I was there just a little before sundown. Went back the next morning and the cow was dead, and her hind leg was cut off, and they got all they wanted to eat and they went on.
Mhm.
But they killed a cow to do that.
Well, last week, we went up to one watering over there, and they had tried to get a drink. We have it turned down a pipeline, and you can't get any water unless you know where the valve is. Well, they turned every valve they could find and broke the pipeline. The pressure broke the pipeline. And the pump was pumping off down the draw, some way down the draw. They do things like that now over at the ranch. But here, they don't bother things so much because we have lights on. We have night lights outside.
Mhm.
But that's what's pretty bad.
There are a lot more aliens going through this country now than there used to be.
Well, not right now they're not, but sometimes they're just awful bad. And they're pretty bad about catching the bus here and going on. They try to miss this station up here and where the border patrol's at.
This is like Grand Central Station because we're just 60 miles from the border.
Uh-huh.
They come through.
We had one that come in a couple of years ago, and poor old thing, his feet was awful. He'd walked, he was hungry and Ben fed him. And he told my son-in-law, he said, I have walked from Guatemala.
Gosh.
And about the time Ben got his coffee and something to eat, the Border Patrol came along and picked him up.
15 months.
It took him 15 months to walk all that way?
Yeah.
He'd eaten on rats and lizards and snakes.
He was a pitiful looking thing, but he was honest about where he'd come from. He told us he could talk English.
Mm-hmm.
And just think he'd walked that long
For nothing.
for nothing. They caught him. He didn't even have time to eat his breakfast that we fixed for him. Well, he let him eat it, but that was how quick he got caught.
Y'all used to employ braceros here in the 50s?
No.
We did.
Dell City did.
They did in Dell City. They would just run over with them.
We never have, or even wetbacks, we don't.
Dell City plants a tomato crop. Oh, they have a huge crop. And for about 3 months, why, they have lots of workers in to pick the crop. And lots of trucks are hauling.
They grow some cantaloupe up there too, don't they?
Yes, they sure do.
And sheep too.
When did they start putting those in? Start planting them?
About 10 or 12 years ago.
Something like that. Every year it seems like it gets bigger and bigger. They've built a great big packing shed, a sorting shed, and a washing. They got a large facility up there to handle them. Beautiful place.
Did y'all ever think about farming?
He did.
I spent
He farmed
$100,000
He
on
farmed over on our ranch land.
over there and never did make nothing, and I quit until 4 or 5 years ago, and I drilled another well and got lots of water. Now my grandson's farming over there and he's doing pretty good.
Well, our problem was we didn't know to go deep to get good water, and that water was so salty, it killed a lot of the crop. We just had to quit. But when we drilled this latter one now, we went 1,240 feet.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Got good soft water. It's just wonderful. And an underground river.
97 feet.
A lot of artesian pressure then, bring it up close to the surface.
Yeah, bring it up to where you strike the first water. It always does that, to the static level. And he don't have to pump too deep, but he has good water.
He raised 320 bales last year off 220 acres.
Boy, it's pretty
A
good.
beautiful crop. If you could just get something for it now.
Still hadn't sold.
Y'all get a gin in Dell City, or
Two of them
Two
up
of
there.
them.
when were those gins put in?
48 or 49.
Somewhere back there.
Now, the one they put in is 48. Last part of 48, the first part of 49. They've already taken it down and replaced it with another one. And I don't remember when they put that one in now. It was just a few years after.
In that well that we drilled, they hit an underground river. That don't have any pump to see how much it pumps. Wonderful.
When you say river, that means you can drill on either side and miss it.
Yep. Because we did.
Because you don't know how wide that river is.
Anybody around here witch for water?
Well, that man witched that well, but he missed the depth. He said 300 and not over 400, and if you go 500, well, come see me and let me witch it again. We didn't do it. We just kept going on down.
They drilled an oil well down here, and they struck 3 underground rivers they couldn't handle. They just had to work and work to get past them.
How many sacks of cement they put in that
They
one?
dumped in one of those streams, they dumped in 180 and went back about 2 hours later and there wasn't any of them there.
Just washed it away.
Gosh. Where was this at?
On my ranch over there. It's about, 300 yards from the old home place over at the ranch.
Abels.
At Abels Post Office.
Mm-hmm.
We they lived there for 40 years, had to struggle for every drop of water they could get, and they drilled this well right in the backyard of where the old house is, and 3 big underground rivers. And Ed said his mother would turn over in her grave if she knew there's that much water there. We couldn't believe it either.
Mm-hmm.
They had 2 big old compressors. Oh, they was forward near to that other wall over there.
Mm-hmm.
Pumping that water out, and this 10-inch stream just pushing out there at least 20 feet. Never did lower it.
Gosh.
Just unbelievable.
What do y'all expect as far as the future's concerned? You expect farming operations around here to grow? Or?
Yes, sir, I do.
If they can get plenty of pretty good water.
If they can get anything for it after they raise it.
Now, that's gonna be like the drought is on the cattlemen. If they can't get a good price, they can't keep on going, because equipment is so awful high.
One water on that cotton. My son said, I don't have enough money to water it another time, and I need one more water. I said, well, go ahead and I'll pay for it. I wish I hadn't said it, because it cost me nearly $4,000 just for one going around.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a quick one. It wasn't like what he usually does. And you know, farmers just can't.
They've got to get more for it if they raise it like that. Now, if it rain, that's different, but it don't rain here.
He got one rain on his farm last summer, and that wasn't a real good one. He had to keep on watering. He didn't get any help from the heavens at all.
Did you?
You just go try and buy a new tractor. It's just out of this world.
Now, what did you start to say?
I was just going to ask you, you talked before about the drought in 17 and then one later in the 20s. I was wondering approximately what years that there have been drought in this area.
Well, since 1917, we have about 2 good years and 3 or 4 bad ones. And it's been that way all along, clear up till right now. Now, all the country ain't that way now. It's just, I'm just speaking of our place.
When y'all first moved out here, was there more moisture then?
Oh, yeah. It rained from 1907 till 1913, it just rained the bottoms out.
His daddy planted the first cotton that was ever planted in this country, and it was dry land for him.
Really?
His daddy,
When was that?
He planted it in 1906. Oh, it was pretty cotton. And he didn't plant it where the overflow run. He planted it up kind of on a hill. But it just rained enough that it got up about that high and just plumb full of cotton. We'd turn our milk cows in there and boy, we got the milk.
They didn't pick it, they didn't have no way for her to haul it to.
But he just planted it for experimenting.
Did he continue to plant every year, or did he?
No, he did. That's the only time he planted cotton. The rest of the time he planted maize and sorghum for the cattle and the horses. And then we got the market for the beans. We planted 45 acres of beans, and we planted them where the overflow would run. We raised 10,000 pounds of beans, and we thrashed them with sticks. We didn't have no thrasher. Now, if you don't think that is a job,
When did y'all plant those beans?
we started in 1910. 10 and 11, 12, up to 1950, and then we quit.
How come?
Well, got so many cattle, we just didn't have time to farm.
A 4-day trip to haul them to town.
And about 3 weeks thrashing them with a stick, I'll tell you earn them.
Who contracted to buy these?
The Van Horn Trading Company, Van Horn.
Was 1915 then pretty much the end of your daddy's agricultural activities?
Well, he died in 1916. He was sick in 1915. He went blind in 1910. That's when I started looking through the collar, and I never have looked back since. Still looking through it. I have sure worked in my life.
Really interesting. Haven't heard much about your family, Miss Hammack.
Well, I thought you wanted to see him more than you did me.
Well, since you're both here, why?
Well, like I say, we came to Van Horn in 1908. And we camped there until they found where our land was. Then we moved out there. My uncle was closer, so we lived there with them until they built them a dugout. We got them set up while we moved on over to our place, and he came over and helped the boys and my dad. We built us a dugout, and then we lived in the tent and the wagon too. And we cooked outdoors for about a year. We had our stove sitting under a tree. And we built our dugout, got it livable. And I grew up there. I was just 3 years old when we moved out here.
Were you the only girl in the family?
No, my sister, she was older than I was. And we had the 3 brothers.
What kind of chores or activities did you have to do as a child?
Carrying the chips for the fire. I hated that with a purple passion. We had a fireplace and a cook stove. And I had to carry in a basket of chips every night. I can remember telling my dad one day when I forgot to bring them in and he got after me. I said, "You just wait. when I have a little girl, she's not gonna bring any chips in for me. And she didn't either.
No, because we didn't have them to bring.
Oh, we had the one we lived over at the ranch.
Yeah, but they didn't start the fire with chips over there like we did. Oh, Lord.
No, I used the axe chopping wood.
And my brothers all worked for this big ranch down here, and so did my dad, to get money to build our house, build us some cisterns to catch rainwater, and build a tank. And that was our activities the first few years we were there. We didn't have any cattle, we had horses.
Y'all would raise and sell horses, or?
No, just for our own use. We had two wagons and two sets of teams, and then some saddle horses.
Well, was your dad interested in setting up a ranching operation or a farm, or?
Ranching. As soon as we could, why, they began to buy a few head of cattle. We had a pretty place. It was over on the Abels. It's pretty up there. They have pinon and cedar trees.
Did y'all live up in the mountains? Or?
Mhm. Yes.
Right up close to the top.
Right on the edge of, almost on the edge of Victoria Canyon. I guess you've heard of that. You seen it?
I don't think I've seen it, though.
Beautiful. You can have a look at my picture of it right there. Just take a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
It goes out into the flat there where you come up from Van Horn.
Boy,
Isn't that pretty?
that sure is.
We had our home back this way from looking at the canyon up on, we were on top of the mountain.
How close were your closest neighbors?
Well, when we first moved there, about 10 miles was our closest. But later, there was 3 families took up land around us, and they were a little closer. But as soon as they could, they sold out and moved. And didn't have any water, no wells or nothing, just had to depend on the rain.
Rain was pretty scarce.
Not then, not those days. We had there was a little tank on our place where the horses could get a drink, but we had to haul our drinking water about 15 miles. And I got caught making mud pies one day with that water that we had to haul. I got another lesson too.
How often would you have to go for to haul water?
Once a week.
Once a week?
Once a week. We hauled it in barrels.
Wooden barrels.
Mm-hmm.
How'd y'all make a living doing all that?
The boys hard out to work, and my dad did too. He worked on a ranch where we haul our drinking water from, or he would be a little closer home. And one of the boys would stay with my sister and me. One of them would be with us all the time, while the others worked out, and they'd take turns, one of them staying with us. That's the way they made their money to prove up on our land and build a house. You know, you had to have a house. That's the way they did it. And we had to go to Van Horn to get our groceries. And that was a day's trip down, stay all night, and a day's trip back.
What was Van Horn like in those days?
Just a wide place in the road.
I really don't remember because I was so little. But I can remember that old railroad pumping going. It was pumping water for the trains. It ran constantly. I can remember that.
Didn't they have a bunch of springs around Van Horn?
Not that I know of.
Never heard of them. Not right around Van Horn.
The only place I know of where they found any quantity of, you know, what you might call surface water It was a hazel mine. They had to quit working it because they couldn't pump the water out.
Mhm.
And then on Helen Hall's place, they had a spring.
Yeah.
But that was up north of Van Horn.
Mhm.
And that's the only one I know of.
The Hazel Mine, where was that located?
About,
About 15 miles from Van Horn, wasn't it?
no, I think about 10. It's right up there close to Helen Hall's place.
Well, but
Well, anyway,
it's 10 or 12.
yeah, it's a silver mine. And it's really a good mine, rich mine, but they can't do anything with the water. Yeah.
When did your dad get his cattle operation set up?
Well, to tell you the truth, I don't remember. I remember when he bought the first milk cow, but I don't remember what year.
Mhm.
I just don't remember. I was too little. I wasn't interested in anything like that.
Where did you attend school?
I didn't go to school until I was 10 years old. We didn't live anywhere near a school. And my sister went to Van Horn and finished her high school there. And she got married. And this man she married, he was the manager of the Beach Mercantile in Van Horn. And they transferred him to Balmaray. And I started school there.
In Balmaray?
I was 10 years old. But they had taught me pretty good. They put me in the 3rd grade.
Did Balmaray at that time have all those irrigation canals all over
They
town?
had one. The main one that goes through town. They had it. And up close to this big sprig, what was the name of that? Phantom Lake or something like that. It's back up in the foothills. Anyway, that's the one that supplied the water. They had 1 or 2 little alfalfa farms, the best I remember. But now it's a big place for farming.
Sure is.
Yeah.
And Pecos, it used to be a big farming country,
Mhm.
letting all that land.
But the fuel's got so high they just can't do it. There's another problem the farmers are facing.
How long did you live in Balmaray?
1 year. I finished one school term. And then he got transferred to El Paso to another place up there to work. And we all moved to El Paso. And I went to grammar school in El Paso. And 6 months of high school. I quit. He talked me out of it.
You did?
Yeah. He said it was too lonesome over here on the ranch. He didn't want to live over there anymore.
He wasn't going to either.
Once y'all got married, what? Did you already have a ranch set up, or did you work for?
He worked for his mother.
Yeah, worked for her.
Then we had another drought. She didn't have enough grass for our cattle and hers. And that's when we decided we better come over here, sold her cattle.
Besides the grass, what other kind of vegetation around here can cattle eat?
Sagebrush.
Sagebrush?
It's the lifeblood of the rancher's life. It'll stay green all winter, and they can eat on it all winter. And all the time when there's no grass.
Besides sagebrush, what?
Just weeds when it rains. When it don't rain, there's nothing.
And the mesquite beans, when it rains, they have a good crop.
Aren't those beans sometimes toxic? to the cattle?
Not to the cattle, they'll give horses colic. They'll kill a horse if he eats too many.
Mm-hmm.
But
We
it
got
don't,
one that's dumb enough, they eat too many every year.
but I never have seen it kill a cow. I don't think it ever hurt a cow because she belches. And sure it could, I just don't think beans had ever hurt her.
The horse can't get rid of it. The only way you can save him is to trot him and run him.
Don't ever let him lay down. 'cause
And
he
don't
is
ever
his
let him
own.
lay down, it's just too bad.
Mm-hmm.
We lost one and it just killed him, just blowed him up and killed him. And her son has one, he just will eat those beans. 3 times now, we've just nearly lost him. Just have to run him and trot him till he can get that
About
gas
26 years old or 27, he still don't have sense enough to leave him alone.
They're pretty good eating.
They make good jelly too.
Yeah.
Did you ever eat any jelly made from them? It's good.
Tastes a whole lot like honey.
Really? Have to try some.
It's good.
My daughter made some, a couple, 3 years ago. Last year, we didn't have hardly.
Did you ever eat any prickly pear jelly?
Not yet. We had some, my wife and I have some prickly pear that grow next to our house. And, we took all the fruit and gave it to an aunt and uncle who were interested in.
Is it the big purple?
Is that Engelman
Mhm.
prickly pear?
Oh, it makes delicious jelly. We're getting off the subject now, if you want to ask
Yeah.
something else.
Well, really, I guess I'm about out of questions. If
Well,
My my home over there is still in the family. And he got some of his mother's land and we bought next to it. And it's still in the family. And his dad started the brand for himself and the family back in
1906 or 7.
Did you get cattle that quick?
I think so. I think you got a few dead.
Yeah, you had some milk cows.
Well, anyway, he started his brand and it's still in the family. It still belongs to us.
that's
The
great.
7X brand. And it's registered at Texas A&M College in that Hall of Fame down there.
Mhm.
You never was there, was you?
I've never been to College Station. Always wanted to go look it over, but
Her son graduated from there, her oldest one.
Like just one semester, make it his master's and quit.
that's a lot of work to quit.
Didn't do any good. When he went to work for the government, I told him, I said, I guess you know that job you've got requires that you get your master's. Yep. I said, what'd they say? If they decided I needed it, they knew how to make me get it. He's been working 11 years for them, and I guess they don't decided he didn't need it.
Mhm. What type of cattle did y'all run?
Herefords.
They do pretty well in this country?
Outside of pink eye, they have that awful bad. But other than that, they do awful good.
I think it's on account of this dust and wind, too, a whole lot of it.
Right now, we have Black Angus. He got doctoring pink eye and cancer eye on those white faces. They don't have it.
Mhm.
The Black Angus don't have it.
Well, y'all think of anything else?
I don't.
I don't really know anything that's interesting.
That would be interesting to you.
Yeah. Of course, now if you want to know about me riding broncs and things like that, why?
Well, what about you riding broncs?
Well, I tell you,
The curls and do it every time Mama wasn't looking.
He loved to do that better than the kid loves candy.
And then fusses at his grandson for liking doing the same thing.
yeah, but I look back and see the big mistakes that I made doing it.
Well, he's got to have his mistakes too. Although I don't approve of it.
He had a favorite horse that would buck with him every morning he got on him. He would kick him every chance he got. And he says, I'm so worried about this grandson that was here a little bit ago. I'm so afraid one of them horses is going to kick him and break a leg. But he didn't worry about himself.
One time I was catching a bronc up and he wouldn't let me get up to him. I took a double rope and hit him right between the ears with a double rope. He just raised both feet up, put one right on top of my head and one on my shoulder, pulled me right between his legs. And then he jumped over me and run off the other end of the trail and looked at me.
Then he worries about his grandson.
Yeah, but there was somebody around, and I can see why he worries about John, because there's no one over there. It's just John. Glenn farms, he's up there in the field all the time, and he never knows what's going on.
I wouldn't do it again if I knew then what I know now.
If you had as much sense then as you have now.
But
Every chance he got, he'd slip off from one and go down there and try to ride one. If we missed him, we knew that's where he was at.
I just love to ride them things.
He went out one day, and about a couple hours later, he walked back in. He was kind of addled. He didn't know what was wrong with himself. And the horse had fell with him. And of course, when he got up, luckily his foot didn't hang in his stirrup. He got a loose from him. And the horse went one direction, he went the other. But he walked home, but he just didn't hardly know what had happened to him. But still he worries about the grandson.
I can see the mistakes.
Yeah, I know. They've had quite a life.
These rodeos, a man don't realize what he's getting into. Why, that's the most dangerous thing you can get into. But I did like to ride a horse and just catch him in the shoulders with my spurs and watch him just, and then he'd go to the bucket. I rode a mini one. Never was very good roping. Never was very good.
What's it take to be a good bronc rider?
Hard work.
Hard work and lots of hours of riding. And a good saddle. That's the main thing. You get one of them form-fitting saddles, I'll tell you it's hard to get you out of there.
The grandson that was here, he goes in for roping. He goes to all these roping things. He just loves it.
Just like your granddad.
One of these days, he's gonna win something.
He does, we can't live with him. No, he goes for the fun of it.
Well, now, anytime you want to cut it off, I think we just about run out.
Okay.
I love the family.
That's great.